Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Heart of the Hills. Today I'm here with Charlene Wood, who's going to tell us some stories about her time in the Air Force. How are you today, Charlene?
I'm fine, thank you. And you?
I'm good. So, what was your experience like in the Air Force?
Well, let me start off at the beginning. My twin and we graduated from Nelsonville, York, first class, and we didn't know what we wanted to do. So we read a letter from our cousin who was in the Navy, and we thought, well, why not? Let's go in the Air Force.
When you joined, what did you do when you joined?
Well, of course, you go to basic training. We were in Lackland Air Force Base. We were in the same, they were called flights. And unfortunately, our training instructor did not like the fact that she had two twins in her flight because during that time, they could not separate twins.
Why was that?
Because there was an incident with two male twins that were separated, and one of them would just start crying for no reason at all, and they couldn't figure out why. So a psychologist got involved and found out that the other twin was being, I don't know if you want to say abused or mistreated, and they caught that, and then that's when they decided that twins could not be separated.
Hmm. So, what was that like going in there with a twin that you couldn't be separated from?
It was good. We weren't in the same room, but it was interesting. I mean, it really made you grow a lot. You became a team with other people. We had our own, I don't know she was like picked to be the head of our flight, and she was our team leader.
Did you have any family history of anyone in the military beforehand, or were you kind of just going in blind and figuring it out when you got there?
Our dad was in the Army Air Corps in World War II.
Had you heard stories about that? Did that kind of inspire you, or?
No, it was just something we decided, well, let's try it. Let's leave Nelsonville and see how things go.
How long were you in for?
I was in for 4.
What are some experiences that you'd went through that you think maybe changed who you are a little bit, maybe made you a better person, or made you, have a different perspective on things?
I think the whole thing. My twin and I did ask to be separated for our technical training, and I went to Mississippi, and that was the first time we had been separated. So I think that was good for us to be separated, but then it was sort of hard being away from her.
Was there any pushback when you guys asked to be separated, since they didn't want to do that at the time, or were they, if you asked, was it like, oh yeah, we can do that for you?
Yes, they were very helpful in that situation.
What is it just like being in the Air Force? What are some things that you got to do? What are some things that you do in the Air Force?
Well, I worked in personnel, officers' records. I worked in a lot of different offices. Officers' records, reenlistment and separation, personal affairs, and which was probably one of my favorites because when a military retiree or active duty would die, that me and my lieutenant would go to the houses and take the paperwork to the spouse so they would fill it out so they could get their benefits, and I like that a lot.
Was that kind of hard at first going there, because families are still in grief and everything, and you're trying to go and be like, fill out this paperwork? Was that kind of difficult at first, or?
No, not really. Most of the people were retired and had medical problems, and their spouses were prepared, so it was pretty easy.
Why did you leave when you left? Did you just, contract was up and you decided to leave, or?
No, it was my ex-husband. We weren't married at the time, and he wasn't going to stay in.
What did you do when you got out?
I worked in the Riverside County Recorder's Office for a little while, and then I moved up to north of San Francisco, trying to find a job, and I found a job in it was called Jinkles Optical, and I interviewed with the owner, and because I was a veteran, he decided he wanted me to work. And when I got in that office, the records had never been cleaned out. It was a disastrous area. And I cleaned everything out, got rid of stuff, and I started going to college part-time at night.
Did you ever miss being in the Air Force or think about going back or anything like that? Was it kind of hard to adjust to being out and just doing normal people things?
No, it wasn't hard. It was just when when I went to this agency before I got this job, they always had you do a typing test, and because we typed forms, you don't get any speed. So they would say, oh, you can't work in an office because you don't type fast enough. Well, fortunately, I didn't have to in my job I got.
Was there any personality traits or like discipline or anything like that that you picked up in the Air Force that you think helped you thrive in your jobs after leaving or just thrive as a person in general?
I think the trying to straighten up messes, and even now, I still put my hangers in the same direction. That's one thing that we did. Your hangers had to be put in the same direction, but some of the other stuff I don't really use. But it's just like the organization. I hate things if they're not organized well, especially when I was working.
So you left after 4 years. Did your twin too, or did she stay in longer?
Well, she got out at 2 years because she got married and had a child. And at that time, it was 1970, they would not let women stay in. And she was out for, I think, 7 years, and then she went in the Navy and stayed for 18.
Did you ever think about going back in the same branch or a different branch later on in life, or?
No, I didn't think about it at all.
So you just kind of moved on from that part
Yes.
and now. So after you got your first job after leaving, what did you do after that? What's kind of your life been like after that?
I was going to a small school called Skyline College, which is a little bit south of San Francisco. And then after 2 years of working, I said, I don't want to work anymore, I just want to go to school. So then I moved up around the Russian River area, and I was going to Sonoma State for clay sculpture, and after a year I realized, no, that's not who I am. So I changed to another school, Santa Rosa Junior College, and went into ornamental horticulture, which is plants. And I really enjoyed that. And after a year there, I transferred over to a school called Rockland, which is north of San Francisco. And I had an interview for a job for a greenhouse on the school grounds. Well, I knew nothing about mixing of the soil, starting from scratch, because some woman had decided to use nicotine as a natural pest deterrent, and she killed all the plants. So my instructor, he interviewed me, and I said, Larry, I know absolutely nothing. And he said, well, I'll show you how to do it. So I ended up running the greenhouse at the school, plus taking classes 3/4 time. And when I left the school, our greenhouse was completely filled with plants, and our lath house, which is like a hardening place that you put your plants before you put them outside, was completely full. And that was just, it was just amazing that I got to that point where I knew what was going on.
And didn't kill all the plants.
No, that's for sure.
Is there any other stories or memories or anything from that time that you have that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I can tell you some interesting, well, one interesting story. When I was at my technical training at Keesler Air Force Base in Mississippi, we would go to the Airmen's Club, and there would be this one guy, and he'd come up and he'd say, "Will you dance with me?" And I say, "Well, yeah, if you buy me a drink." Well, I never danced with him. So my twin and I end up getting stationed in Southern California together, and she got to the base before I did. And this guy, the same guy, came up to her and said, "You owe me some dances." And she said, "I have no clue what you're talking about. Where were you stationed?" And then he told her Keesler Air Force Base, and she said, "Well, that's my twin sister. I'll know you're lying." That's typical stories that, we had happened to us. And so about a week later, I showed up, and we were in the chow hall, mess hall, whatever you want to call it. And he walks in and he looks over and comes over, and my sister said, "See, I told you that I had a twin sister." And, how would that ever happen? That was just some strange thing. And on the base that we were at, she worked in supply, and I worked in personnel, and the people knew that if they came to me, that I would make sure, if they had problems with other offices, that, I said, "Hey, I'll see what I can do." So we would take off sometimes on the weekend and go to between Newport and Laguna Beach. There would be a beach, and you'd park up a hill and you'd go down, and we would go to the chow hall and say, "Hey, do you have anything you can give us to take on our trip?" And they would give us food. And we would take it to the beach, and of course people were hungry, so we shared food. We did that quite a few times, and that was really lots of fun. Met a lot of Navy and Marines. We even had great trips to Disneyland, where we go in buses, and it would be completely closed to the outside people, and just only military could go in. And that was a lot of fun, because you met a lot of different people from different military bases, a lot of people from Ohio, Michigan. It was a fun thing to do. I mean, but after a year of going 13 times to Disney, you sort of get tired of it.
Do you have any advice for anyone wanting to join the Air Force?
I think everybody should go in the military. It really makes you grow as a person. The benefits are great. Of course, certain branches you travel more. The Navy, you travel a lot, but yeah, I would do it again if I was right out of high school. I think it's the best experience I ever had.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming on here to talk to me today and talk to everybody today. Is there anything else that you'd like to add, or?
No, nothing at all. I'm still patriotic. I still cry when I hear the national anthem, when I hear taps. So, my patriotism runs deep.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in for another episode, and I want to give a big thank you to Charlene for coming on here and telling everybody stories about her time in and then after the Air Force. Veterans Day had just passed, and November is Veterans Appreciation Month, so I really appreciate her coming on here to tell everybody her story.